joining us today as we have a very special guest, Professor Stefano Gatti from Bocconi University, one of the top universities in Italy and among the best in Europe. Now, today the focus of our discussion is Italy and its economy. What reforms are needed to ensure its prosperity? So in case your viewers and guests, you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the public chat, and we will try to address them within the next 25 minutes. But without any further ado, Professor Gatti, it is our pleasure to have you on our webinar. Let us then begin with the very first question that I have. Now, Italy is the third biggest economy in the Euro area. However, it has underperformed.
The audio has switched off.
Can you hear me now? I just want to address the very first question that I had in mind. Now, Italy is the third biggest economy in the Euro area. However, it has underperformed since the single currency was established in 1999 and for a decade before that. Now, what are the main causes for the disappointing performance of Italy?
Well, there are many possible. I would not say anything particularly new to many of the listeners to the service. I would say that we can broadly distinguish the two different causes into two main categories. The first one is what I defined as economic variables, and the other is the group of what I define as institutional variables. Aside institutional variables, I believe that most of the troubles the country has experienced in the past few years has been due to the elections that have been carried out in Italy, and these elections were based on a very old kind of set of rules that goes back to 1945. As you probably know, Italy has not, like in other European countries, and the fact that minor coalitions and minor parties can boycott, in a sense, the action of the government creates some troubles when whatever kind of government wants to introduce or implement important reforms that Italy needs for a very has been needed for a very long time. This implications at the end of the day, even if you have a very good government in place, but unfortunately the party of election is strongly weakened, and you don't have the possibility to carry out the necessary reforms. The problem, again, on institutional variables is that the institutional quality of some of the institutions in Italy are not performing particularly well compared to what happens in other competing countries. If you look, for example, at some of the data collected by, for example, index of corruption or effectiveness of government, out of 100 World Bank, we rank 72 out of 176, much behind other competing G7 countries. And the same holds true of effects of government, 212 ranks only 72. Again, this indicates that also institutional variables are not working properly in our own country. Coming to economic, I would basically identify some of them. The first is certainly a low, as shown compared with competing countries abroad. This is probably due to a structural lack of innovation in terms of products and processes in the past few years. If you look, for example, at some statistics prepared by Eurostat, and you compare, for for example, the percentage of firms that innovate in terms of products or processes, Italy ranks behind countries like Spain, France, Germany. This is something reducing the degree of competitiveness of our goods and services vis-à-vis what is happening abroad. On top of this, another critical issue which is still there, taxation on enterprises at a very high salary, no in any other countries. At the end of the day, if you have a very high competitiveness is very low. And so if you take everything together, you can have a clear picture of what is really the Italy has inherited right now.
Okay, let us focus a little bit on the unemployment in Italy, considering that it is a pressing issue and the current level stands at 30%, the highest level in approximately 37 years by some gauges. However, the working age population who do have jobs in the third quarter of last year was indicated at 55.6%. Now, taking into account the later figures, how accurate do you view the labor market statistics, and what reforms are needed to ameliorate the current state?
It is difficult to say if statistics on the labor market are reliable or not. I would simply take a couple of numbers that have been published, as you said, very recently. On Italian market. The first one is that unemployment has been in the region of 13%, but the most important indication that comes from labor, in my opinion, is the level of youth unemployment that has reached dramatically. We are in the region of 43%, which is easily comparable to other peripherals like for example, Spain and Greece. So we want to get the situation as a result of the weak economic performance. If I answer your question in terms of what can be ameliorated, I think of the recent appointed government is very clear. We have a relevant problem in terms of corporate tax is one of the highest European level. If you add to this the fact that the collection of taxes in Italy are penalizing the cost of employees and creates a very relevant salary wedge, at the end of the day, you end up with a situation where goods and services in Italy cost much more with equal quality compared with other goods or services produced abroad. So the real receipt, in my opinion, to solve the problem of high unemployment is, for sure, try to shift the taxation more from labor and corporates to consumption, even if, of course, there are some concerns in terms of possible effect on disinflation that this could trigger. But this is certainly the way we must go through in order to conquer again an additional level of competitiveness.
Okay, and if we also may continue forward now, the Italian government debt, which according to the IMF is now more than 130% of the annual GDP, is one of the key economic weaknesses. And at the same time, poor growth makes it more challenging to tackle the issue. Considering how much the two are interconnected, how do you think we would be, what do you think would be the most effective way to break the link and recover the
nice question, hard to address. If I had the correct receipts, probably I would be the Prime Minister. So, jokes apart, it is really difficult to give. What you can basically do is to use the levers that economy you can use when you want to level of debt. Some of them can be easily used. Some others are much more difficult or even unpopular. Let me start basically from the entry side. On the side of revenues that could flow to the state, the possible option, which in a sense has been used recently by the recently appointed government, has been an increased taxation, in this case taxation on financial profits, capital gains, and things and trading activity on financial assets. But you can understand that the Italian tax pressure is so high that at a certain point you can't afford. The second one is a clear view on cutting expenses, current expenses of the administrative machine, and whereby we are trying to cut some unproductive public administration expense in order to reach more effective kind of use. For example, incentives in terms of research and development, increase the level of investment, poor performance in terms of innovation vis-à-vis the other European partners. The third is, I would say, repattern, divesting some of the public assets, and the government has recently announced a massive plan for privatizations of the jewels in Italy. Very likely we will put on the market the posts. There are talks that keep on the market in order to reduce the public deficit on one side, and by curbing the public deficit to cut a little bit the burden of the debt. Of course, the way is very narrow. There are no easy solutions for this, but I would say these are the three main kind of that you can use.
Italy has to overcome a large number of obstacles to rebalance its economy, and you have mentioned the reforms that will be implemented by the new government, but how do you actually evaluate the prospects of the recently appointed government led by Mr. Renzi to accelerate reforms and achieve the long-anticipated Italy's economic prosperity?
Again, it is difficult to evaluate the performance of a government after less than 1 month from the appointment of the new Prime Minister. What can be observed here in our country is that there is a clear sign of the willingness to reform and to introduce radical reforms compared to what happened in the past. One clear thing that emerges from the first declarations of the government is that there's sort of a clear agenda that is based on key milestones that in the next few months should be carried out by the government. The reform of the electoral system, the reform of the upper chamber, the reform of taxation, reforms of the labor market, apparently, it seems that the government agenda is very busy and very well structured. Let's see what will happen, even if I must say that it is obvious that one of the key elements that will enable the government to go smooth on the track of the anticipated reforms is the mother of all reforms, a two-party system, much in line with what happens, for example, in UK or in US. If we are able to reform this kind of electoral system, we believe that government that will be appointed will have the strength
Okay, and another question that I think is worthwhile mentioning is the fact that Italy's economy ministry recently called for a change of approach in resolving the question of growth in Europe and a change in the focus in EU economic policy. Now, to your mind, what should that focus be, and how realistic do you see 18 member states of the Eurozone having to agree to the same necessary reforms and implement them?
It's a very nice, it's a very good question. Unfortunately, there are no receipts or users solutions for what you are asking me. First, a unique market. We all know that Europe is not a continent which is unified like United States. We have different languages, different taxations, different legislative kind of bodies and rules. And so, at the end of the day, we are a sum of parts and not a single economic area. Has been recently undertaken from a monetary side. As you probably know, the asset quality review is in place now. It will be completed next year, and this should put the basis for a unique supervisory mechanism, a unique resolution of crisis mechanism, and it strengthens a little bit what today is again something that is a unique monetary policy, but with more than one different peripheral level. From an economic point, but from a political point of view, is that there are still divergent opinions in terms of how much severity and how much austerity is necessary in Europe in order to restore confidence of investors and I would say better accounts from the public administration's point of view, and find the right equilibrium between the instances of austerity versus some other positions that are more sustainable only with something that is more a political negotiation rather than a pure and simple economic receipt.
Professor Stefano Gatti, I know that you have to leave in 5 minutes, but while we still have that time, I saw a question published by one of our viewers in the public chat, so I hope you don't mind if we address this one last question before you leave. Now, the question is, a report from the European Commission published on 27th March showed that most EU countries saw an increase of corruption. Now, how has Italy planned to tackle this issue, and what are the major challenges in reducing the level of corruption in Italy?
It's a nice question. I read the report, and it is sad to see that you know, the degree of corruption has increased in a pretty homogeneous way, also in countries that traditionally ranked not so high in terms of corruption indexes. From what I'm observing here in Italy, there is a clear view of the recently appointed government in terms of reform of justice. And I would say there are a couple of things that are particularly important, at least looking at the declarations of the government. On one side is strengthening the fight against, you know, criminality, the mob, the mafia, and cleaning of this kind of interconnection between public administration and regular business activity. If you look at the past few months, the results have been particularly appreciable from this point of view, and this is a clear sign that government is pushing the accelerator on this kind of intervention. Second is probably not toward corruption, it's also is the attention and this could create good occasions in order to reduce also occasions to be corrupted by officials. There is, last but not least, a clear indication in the phenomenon, you know, projects under supervision, a clear view regarding the reform of justice. Civil justice and penal justice is, in my opinion, improve the quality of corruption indices in Italy.
Professor Stefano Gatti, thank you very much for your time. I know you have to leave to your next meeting, so I really appreciate your time and discussing the very interesting topic of Italy as well as its economy. We hope to see you sometime once again on a webinar, and it was a pleasure having you and very enjoyable discussion indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.